are you? You know, I was just reading this beautiful letter from Auntie White, and wow, I mean, it gave me so many important answers that I was wondering why we as young people have such a hard time with life. I mean, we're in this period where we're neither children nor adults, and still we need to act in a responsible and mature way. And we have, questions as concerned to universities and life and family and all of that, and sometimes it's really hard to balance it all. But while I was reading this letter, I found many of these answers, and I began to question myself. Why do we have such a hard time if all the answers are right here? I mean, Auntie White did a beautiful job. I know this letter was actually, God asking Auntie White to write it to us. But why do we have such a hard time if all the answers are here? Well, it's probably because first, we don't really like to read most of the time. I mean, I know a lot of people who simply do not enjoy reading. But then there's another thing. Auntie White wrote this letter a couple of years back, I'll even say decades. And sometimes she uses expressions and words that we're not accustomed in our day-to-day life. So you know what? I took it upon myself to translate it, if you will, this letter to you. Let's see what we can get from it. While I was reading, I understood that she really has 3 calls of actions for us to do. You know, those things that are like, hey, come on, you need to do this. So there's 3 of them. The first one is go get an education. And as young people, this is really important to us. I mean, since we're little, we're put in primary school, then we go to middle school, then high school, and eventually a university. But what about after that? Does our education stop? Are we supposed to do something? Let's see what she has to say. Never think, never, that you have learned enough and that you may now relax your efforts. The cultivated mind is the measure of the man. Your education should continue during your lifetime. Every day you should be learning and putting to practical use the knowledge gained. Wow. I mean, never think that you have learned enough. So even if you have gone to the best schools in your country or even abroad, there's always something new to learn. And I really found interesting because she says that the cultivated mind is a measure of the man. She's basically saying that you are what you know. So what do you know? Do you know enough? I mean, clearly not enough, because she says that your education should continue during your whole life. So there's always something new to add to it. And do you think it only concerns books and, math, literature, and that type of stuff? Well, we're going to see later on what is that she really means by education. But there's something else that she says that it's really important for us to pay attention. She says that every day we should be learning, which reminds me of that phrase that goes around the world saying that the day you stop learning, you'll die. I mean, Auntie White said it first. But then she continues saying, and putting to practical use the knowledge gained. Today, while we were doing the worship with my family, we actually read that there's no use for us to keep reading and studying if we don't put it to practical, if we don't put it into practice. So, all of that stuff that you learned at school or even at life or with your parents, if you don't put it into practice, well then, you're storing it for yourself, but you're not really learning. So first, get an education, seek to know more, and put it into practice. Now you might be thinking, oh Evelyn, that's a beautiful thing to say, but I don't have the conditions to get into a good school, a private or even fancy school. I don't have those means. But she even writes you something. While a good education is a great benefit if combined with consecration and its possessor, still, those who do not have the privilege of gaining high literary attainments, you, need not think they cannot advance in intellectual and spiritual life. She's saying here that you don't have to worry about not having sufficient money to get into that school, that specific school, in order to be smart and wise. Because she says, if they will make the most of the knowledge they have, whatever you have at hand, if they will seek to gather something to their store every day, and will overcome all perverseness of temper through the studious cultivation of Christ-like traits of character, God will open the channels of wisdom to them. And it may be said of them as it was said of old concerning the Hebrew children, God gave them wisdom and understanding. If you do not have the means to get the education you dream of, don't worry. If you seek to learn something new every single day and put it into practice, God will bless you. And people will see the wisdom in you. And she even compares us to the Hebrew children. I mean, that's Daniel and his 3 friends in the courts of Babylon. That's a high level. So don't worry about not having sufficient money. Just learn to seek something new. And something new might be as random as, I don't know, building something, doing something in a better way, or even paying attention to, when grandparents begin to tell us their story. Just pay attention. There will be something there for you to learn. So seek for knowledge and it will come to you. Now, the second call she makes us is to do more. She says that many who are qualified to do excellent work accomplish little because they attempt little. Wow. I mean, she really gives us a call to do more. By what she's reading here, she says that we have the capacity to do so and that we're not doing enough. Now, have you ever, thought about taking the easy way out? I have. But here's what she says. Those who desire a fixed amount to do and a fixed salary, and who wish to prove an exact fit without the trouble of adaptation or training, are not the ones whom God calls to work in his cause. Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly want him to use me. But she's saying here that when we just want to do this specific amount of work and receive this specific amount of reward, then we're not being qualified. We're not qualifying ourselves in order for him to use us. And that's something to worry, because if he's not using us, then who's using us? You know what I mean? Yeah, that's something we really should pay attention to. She even continues saying that those who study how to give as little as possible of their physical, mental, and moral power are not the workers upon whom he can pour out abundant blessings. Do you want abundant blessings? Do not take this route. Don't seek the easy way out, because then you'll be interrupting or creating an obstacle for God to bless you. Instead, she says that the workers are needed who manifest energy, integrity, diligence, those who are willing to do anything that needs to be done. All right, so if you want to receive the blessings and abundant blessings, do everything that needs to be done. Have energy, have integrity, have diligence, and do your best, which is exactly our third call to action. She says that we are not supposed to be satisfied with reaching a low standard. We are not what we might be or what is God's will that we should be. Low standard. Well, I mean, sometimes we dream about getting successful, and all of those dreams that we think are just, dreams. But she's saying here that we're not supposed to be satisfied with reaching a low standard. And she even continues to say that, remember, that in whatever position you may serve, you are revealing motive, developing character. Whatever your work, do it with exactness, with diligence, Overcome the inclination to seek an easy task. I mean, she's really calling us not to be lazy and to do our best, because she says here, whatever your work, it doesn't matter if you're cleaning the dishes, if you're sweeping the floors, if you're doing your homework, if you're preparing a paper or doing a simple task or even a hard task at your job, do it with exactness, with diligence. She even gives us the reason why to do so. While we're doing those things, we're developing our character. Every task that we're given is an opportunity to become better. And while we're doing it, we're revealing motive. Now, I know you've heard that you're supposed to be a missionary. I mean, you, everyone. But sometimes we think that missionary work means only to go into those secluded areas and to go through hardships and everything. But she's saying here that when we're doing those tasks, we're revealing motive. That means our intentions. What are your intentions? Do you really want to be a Christian? Do you want to be a true Christian? If you do, that will be revealed while you're doing your task. You will be revealing Christ's reflection. And sometimes people have a really high wall build it up to listen to the gospel. But they have nothing against seeing someone who is the pure reflection of Christ, someone who's seeking to reflect his character. Actually, doing something as simple as sweeping the floor can be a deep and strong and powerful missionary work. I bet you never thought about that. But that's what Auntie White is saying in this special letter. Now, she made those 3 calls of actions to us. Go get an education and never stop learning. Do more and do your best, always. But she also gave us 3 reminders. 5. And these are really important for us during our whole lives, not only while we're young. The first one she says is, well, remember that I read that she wrote, many who are qualified to do excellent work accomplish little because they attempt little? Yeah. She says that one of the reasons for that is the low estimate which they place upon themselves. When you think about yourself, how do you see yourself? When you look at yourself in the mirror, do you say things, wow, thank you God for making me the way you've made? Or do you see someone that is worthless, useless, a piece of garbage? Sometimes we don't say things like that to ourselves, but we treat ourselves like that. We think that we are without value. But here's what she says. Christ paid an infinite price for us. And according to the price paid, he desired us to value ourselves. Now, what exactly was the price he paid for us? I mean, let's not even start by Christ. Let us start by Jesus, by God. I mean, God our Father. He gave the most precious person in the whole universe to come here to this dark earth to suffer. Because Jesus went through rejection from his families, from his friends, from everyone. I'm sure you've been through rejection, and it is painful. He went through that. He went through physical suffering at the cross, before the cross. He went through mental suffering as well. He spent nights and nights praying to God to give him strength because he needed it. He went through all of that for you, for me. If the King of the universe, I mean, if you wanted to, could you make rain fall down right now? No, we don't have that power, but Jesus had. And if he wanted to, he could have, not suffer as much. He has that power, and yet he went through all of that struggle because he loves you, because he loves me, because we're worthy to him. So you know what? Scrap those bad thoughts from your mind. Stop depreciating yourself. Because that's not what Jesus wants from you. He wants you to value yourself like he did. And it's not little what he valued you as. So whenever those bad things come to your mind, remember, Christ, the King of the universe, the Lord of the lords and King of kings, gave his most precious possession for me. So yes, I am worthy. I am valuable. I am useful. Alright? Next, she reminds us of something that sometimes we don't do. She says none, nobody, no exceptions, should consent to be mere machines run by another man's mind. You know what she's saying here? Think for yourself. The King of the Kings gave you a beautiful brain to put to use. And that means that you have to put it to use. Because you have a life to run. You have decisions to make. You have opinions to form and to make. Yes, you're responsible for that. Don't let Plato or Socrates or Confucius run your life. You have to make those decisions. You have to think what is best for you. You have to seek that. Don't let your best friend, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, pastor, no. If you're going to let someone else do that thinking for you, it's Jesus. Because she says, don't let another man think for you. You have to put that beautiful brain of yours into use. You have to think, you have to plan, you have, to really use those neurons and all of those cells you have in your brain. Think for yourself. The third reminder she gives us, I think it's more of a command. Stand in your God-given personality. Be no other person's shadow. Jesus said while he was in this earth that if we did not talk about him, the stones would. And I think that's exactly what has happened. Because we did not say what we were supposed to say, and then the world began to sing it. I'm sure you've heard about being yourself. But you know what? Auntie White said it first. That's exactly what she means. Be yourself. God gave you a specific personality. If he wanted us to be all the same, all alike, he would have made us robots. Simple as that. Instead, he chose us to make different, unique. Because he wants us to be that way. He doesn't want you to be like your mom, like your dad, like your best friend, like that person you highly admire. No, he wants you to be yourself. And he doesn't want you to be like someone else, because he said be no other person's shadow. You're supposed to be yourself, no one else. And while I was preparing this translation, I researched some successful Filipino women. And one of them I really liked her. Her name is Miriam Defensor Santiago. I'm sure you heard about her. She was a politician, and what really made her stand out was because of her personality. She would say the things that everyone knew needed to be said, but didn't have the courage to. And she was smart, and she said it, she had that way about her. Do you think that if she looked at someone that was, a little bit more on the observant side, who didn't always speak her mind, do you think she would have accomplished everything that she did? I'm not saying she's perfect. That's not what I'm saying. Everyone has their flaws. But she did a good job. She wouldn't have been able to do that, to accomplish that mission, if she had chosen to be someone else. You have a mission. You have a purpose. And God has given you that personality specifically to achieve that purpose. You're the only one who can achieve this mission. And you're only going to succeed at it if you choose, if you decide, if you stand in your God-given personality. Now, she gives us another reminder. She says that many become inefficient, you know, not as good as they're supposed to be, by avoiding responsibilities for fear of failure. Are you afraid to fail? Are you afraid to try something and miserably fail at that? Sometimes I am. But she continues saying this. Thus, they fail of gaining that education which results from experience, and which reading and study and all the advantage that otherwise is gained cannot give them. One of her first calls to action in this letter is to seek an education. But she really made it clear that we need to put it into practice. And here she's saying there are things that we're only going to learn doing. And more. She's saying that by doing nothing, avoiding the responsibilities, we're failing. So if we're failing because we're doing nothing, might as well try something. At least we'll be able to do something. And there's another thing. Failing is an option, always. But succeeding is always an option as well. What if you take that risk? What if you get out of your comfort zone and you fail? Well, 1, at least you've tried something. 2, if you turn your failure into a lesson, if you understand what was your mistake, if you find a solution for it, it's not a failure, it's a lesson. Now, you can fail, but what if you get out of your comfort zone and you succeed, and you help someone, and you make someone's life better? Isn't it worth taking the risk? Absolutely. We need to get out of our comfort zones. We need to, those crazy dreams of us, we need to start conquering it. And sometimes when we're avoiding those responsibilities, we try to blame the circumstances. Oh, I don't have, enough education. I don't have this specific tool, or, whatever other excuse you come up. We're really good at that. But here's what she says. Men can shape circumstances, but circumstances should not be allowed to shape the man. We should seize upon circumstances as instruments by which to work. We are to master them, but should not permit them to master us. Your life. All of those circumstances, all those obstacles. They're not there for you to use They're not there for you to use as an excuse. They're there for you to use as tools, for you to shape them and mold them in what you need. We need to shape our lives. Now, I've talked a bit about having big dreams. And sometimes we daydream about being extremely successful. We dream about being excellent pastors. We dream of having a lovely family. Dreams are as unique as personalities. But then we kind of wake up and think to ourselves, I'm never going to be able to do that. Now, if you've been paying attention to this translation, to what Auntie White wrote, you now understand that you're not supposed to satisfy yourself with a low standard. You're supposed to aim high, to shoot for the stars. But how exactly can you do that? How exactly can you shape the life that you have into the one that you want? She even puts that formula into here, the formula for success. Now, if I was just skimming my eye through this letter, I wouldn't even pay attention to this sentence. But right here, in the 4th paragraph, she gives us the formula for shaping our lives. It says, God has given us ability to think and to act, and it is by acting with carefulness, looking to Him for wisdom, that you will become of bearing burdens. What exactly does this mean? She starts saying, God has given us the ability to think. Now we know we're supposed to think. I mean, she already told us that we're not supposed to let our minds be run by another man. Alright. That means that you can set goal. You can think about what is exactly that you want for your life. Who do you want to become? What is the final destination? Or at least in 10 years, because final is a very big word. In 10 years, where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? You have to think about those things. And then you have to plan your way there. How are you going to get from where you are to where you want to be? What are the steps? You have to plan your life. That's what she's saying here. God has given us the ability to think. So, take advantage of it. Now, she continues saying that God has given us the ability to think and to act. There is going to be no use to that beautiful plan of yours if you don't put it into practice. Now, my chemistry teacher's wife had a really strange question to him whenever he was making those long, scientific, boring papers. She would come up to him and say, "How do you eat an elephant?" Now, of course, she wasn't meaning literally, but the most important part of this is actually the answer. Little by little. You're not going to get from a low-paying job to a highly salary in matter of days. You're going to have to work your way up there. And it might take months, it might take years, it might even take decades. But you have to do little by little. You have to do a little ant's job. If you do it, you'll get there. But she continues. God has given us ability to think and to act, and it is by acting with carefulness. Don't throw everything to the wind. Act with caution. Now, let's take this example from you wanting a better job. All right. If you already have a job, don't quit and go apply and then wait for the answers, because that might not work instantly and you still have yourself to take care of. You might have a family to take care of. So, act with caution. Instead of quitting first, apply first. Wait for their answers, wait for their interviews, and then if it works out, when it works out, then you quit your job. Act with caution. If you want to have a family, you have to build a strategy. You have to understand what exactly do you want in this other person, and you have to act with caution. You have to observe people. You can't just simply say, "Oh, I want to marry," and some people are bad and they will use that against you. So act with caution. Then she continues, and this is the most important step in all of this formula. God has given us ability to think and to act, and it is by acting with carefulness, looking to Him for wisdom. We need to make God a part of our shaping our lives. When you're setting your goals, ask Him, "Lord, is this the goal you want for me? Is it high enough? Or do you have something completely different for me?" While you're making your plan, "Lord, this is my plan. Now, I have 5 steps. Am I missing something? Did I misplace something? I mean, maybe point C might come before point B. You never know. But He knows. So ask Him. And while you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, that you need to do in order to accomplish your goals, then ask Him to give you His wisdom. Have in mind that God's wisdom sometimes is, almost always different from men's wisdom. So to you it might seem the craziest thing to do, but just trust Him. He's a lot wiser than all of us put together. And then finally, after you think, after you acted with caution, and after you have integrated God in all of these elements, then you will become capable of bearing burdens. Now you might think, "Evelyn, why do I want to bear a burden? I mean, I want to have success." Here's the thing that most of us do not understand about success. It comes with responsibilities. I mean, if you want to earn $10,000 a month, that means you're going to have the responsibility to make decisions that will affect hundreds of people's lives. And it will be exclusively upon your shoulders. That is a gigantic burden to bear. A gigantic burden to bear. And you do not become capable of taking those responsibilities like this. You have to give yourself time. You have to go through all of these steps. But when you do, you'll be able to do so to your best, and you will have success. I once heard that if you can't deal with the stress, you can't deal with the success. Now, I like to change that sentence to, if you can't deal with the responsibility, you can't deal with the success. But Auntie White gave us the formula to achieve it. And if you follow every single step, you'll get there. No problem. She even says, I mean, sometimes we think that the road to success is easy. Here's what she says about men of power. You know, those persons who have achieved a high level of success. Men of power are those who have been opposed, baffled, and thwarted. That doesn't sound like an easy road. By calling their energies into action, the obstacles they meet prove to them positive blessings. Now, that reminds me of a little verse. I mean, you know, Romans 8:28, everything works to the best of those who love God. And then she says, they gain self-reliance. She's saying here that in order to achieve success, you're going to walk through a rocky road. But that's okay, because every single one of those pebbles, those rocks, those obstacles are going to help you to become better, to improve your capacity, to improve your abilities, and to improve your ability to bear those burdens, those responsibilities. And in that road, you're going to gain self-reliance. Do you know what self-reliance? Well, I know that you know that I've lived 12 years abroad from my country. And during that period, we moved quite a bit, so we didn't always have time to form those deep-rooted friendships. Most of the time, it was only my mom, my dad, my brother, and me. I couldn't count on my family because she was at my country, and sometimes, you know, it's kind of hard to adapt. So I learned that I could only rely on two people, on two persons. Everyone else, at some point, they're going to leave you. I mean, life happens, life changes, and you won't always have their support. Their support is really important. And if you have it from your friends, your family, take advantage of it. It is a blessing. But do know that there's only two persons who will always, always, always stand by your side. That is God, Jesus, and yourself. If you're not best friends with these two people, you're in trouble. But how do you exactly become friends with Jesus and ourselves? Well, let's walk through the process for God first. You need to stay alone. You need to separate a moment of your day, a couple minutes, a couple of hours, depends on you. And you need to stay alone with Him. And in that moment, you need to know Him. Now, how do you know someone? If you stand there silent and the other person is silent, at the end of the day, you're not going to know much about that person, right? So you need to talk to her. You need to make questions so you know where she's from, what does she do, who is she, you know, stuff like that. And it's no different with God. We need to ask Him. God is open to answer all of our questions. So whatever comes to your mind, ask Him. Who are you? Jesus, who are you? What do you like? What do you dislike? What annoys you? what hurts you, what really makes you happy. How do you show your love? How do you treat those who have not obeyed you? How do you treat those who obey you? How how did you create the earth? Did you have fun doing it? What do you think of so and so? What do you think of this decision? What do you think about when, you know, when the Israelites were going through the Red Sea? What did you think of that moment? What did you want them to learn through that experience? What did you tell Moses in order for to accomplish that goal? You know, as many of those questions as you can think of, ask him. And then thirdly, go after those answers. Now God has let you a very detailed letter, which is the Bible. If you read it, you're going to find so many answers to those questions. And to help you, he even asked Auntie White to write more letters to you. So read those as well. And there's another book that you can find those answers. Nature. I mean, Auntie White says that when we seek to know more about God, when we look to his creation, we find many of those answers. So, in order to know God, you have to stay alone with him. You have to ask him about everything that you want to know, and you have to go seek those answers. Now, that's the most important person in your life, and the one that will always be with you. The other one who will always be with you and is really important for you to make friendship with is yourself. Now, you might think that it might be a little bit trickier to become friends with you because, I mean, you don't have a letter to yourself, right? I mean, how exactly does that work? Well, it actually follows the same principles as with Jesus. You have to stay alone, you have to question, and you have to find those answers. What does that mean? Staying alone with yourself, if you don't know yourself, can be really scary. But, you know, sit on the floor, look at yourself in the mirror, and really separate a moment to stay alone with yourself. That might also mean, sometimes, depending on your situation, to separate a moment of your life, a period of your life, to stay single, so that you can become friends with you. And while you're alone with yourself, ask yourself, make the questions you need to do. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you admire? What do you like? What do you dislike? Why do you like what you like? And why do you dislike what you dislike? What are your traumas? What are the things that you don't want to say out loud, but you know they exist? How are you going to fix it? Or not? Are you going to have to deal with that forever? I don't know. What is your favorite color? What is your favorite dish? What is your favorite book? Who is your favorite biblical figure or character? Everything. Who do you trust? Who you distrust? Everything. You have to know it about yourself. And you have to seek those answers as well. Now you might think, well, Evelyn, I don't have a letter for myself as Jesus has one for me. Some of those answers, you just have to make the questions in order to find them. You know, put your beautiful brain to use and you'll find them. Sometimes you're going to have to read the Bible to find those answers about you, or Auntie's white letters. Sometimes you're going to have to read other books as well. I mean, I once wanted to understand myself a little bit more, and then I read this book called Transformed Temperaments. Wow, it really opened up my mind about myself and others. It was extremely helpful. If you want to read it, you have to go seek those answers. And why is that knowledge about you and Jesus so important? When you know God and when you know yourself, you're friends with both of these persons. You rely upon them. You trust them. You don't need to seek the approval from other persons. You don't need someone by your side to tell you that you're worthy. You know you are. And when someone who doesn't want your good approaches you looking like he or she does, you identify that he's not treating you with respect and that you don't need that person in order to be valuable. So you let them go and you don't get into toxic relationships. When people start talking about you, even if those are lies, you know they are lies. So you don't care for them as much. I mean, it doesn't mean they don't hurt, but they don't destroy you because you know who you are. You know what God wants you to be, and you know who you can trust. And even if everyone forsake you, leave you behind, you know that you always have a friend in Jesus and yourself. You see? It's really important to be able to rely upon you and yourself. This letter was extremely special to me, honestly. And I want to thank you the opportunity to have called me to read it and being able to translate it for you. This letter was special because Auntie White gave us 3 calls to action. Go seek an education. Keep on learning. Do more. You can do it. So do more. And do your best. Because by doing your best, you'll be revealing Jesus' name. And that is a silent and efficient missionary work. She also reminded us that we need to love ourselves. We need to think for ourselves. We need to be ourselves and no one else. And we don't need to be afraid of failing. Because if we fail, transform it into knowledge, then it's a lesson, not a failure. And that we can shape our lives. Our obstacles are not limitations, they're tools. And she even gave us the formula for success. I mean, how great is that? We need to set goals, we need to plan, we need to act little by little, but constantly, and we'll get there. We need to do it with caution, and the most important part of this formula, we need to ask him to be with us, to guide us, to give us his wisdom, even if at times it might sound crazy. And then we'll be able to carry those responsibilities, and we'll have success, whatever that is that God wants for you. And most importantly, we have learned that we need to rely upon ourselves and Jesus. Those are the only 2 persons that will always be by our side. So, better make friends out of them. This is my prayer for you, that you have a wonderful life. Not an easy life. That's not what Jesus wants for us, and we now understand why. He wants us to be full of energy, integrity, and intelligence. And he gave us the life that he gave us so that we would prepare ourselves to become soldiers in his army and fight for him and fight the good cause and receive the utmost and the best reward of all. I know you're a young person, and sometimes it's really hard. But you have a special friend, too. Take advantage of that friendship. Amen.